So this will be the introductory lecture for the hero myth, and you'll notice that the diagram we have here is labeled the hero's journey. The hero's journey has become the most popular way of talking about these kind of stories, as it reflects many of the universal attributes and plot points of the hero's story. Now, the hero's journey is a term coined by a psychologist and student of myth and archetype, a Jungian psychologist named Joseph Campbell. They became really popular in the 70s, and he had a TV show and etc. This particular version of the diagram draws on several other, several other thinkers as well. Campbell spread the hero's journey much larger. He argued that it was a metaphor for life, which I can see, a metaphor for our journey through the world. He also argued that the hero's journey was the one great plot that all stories follow. And he and I diverged there. I don't believe that. But it is a major plot structure of mythology and of many of mythology's descendants in literature in all genres. The basic hero's journey is a cycle from where we begin in the ordinary world, move out of the ordinary world into the extraordinary world, and return. And this is, we're going to take a look at it a little bit closer. So the first part of the story, what our model from the previous slide labels Act 1, is the separation. The story begins with a hero living his or her ordinary life in what is, for them, an ordinary world. So, granted, most of the time these stories are taking place in secondary fantasy worlds, like Lord of the Rings does, or in mythological worlds where the mythology is accepted as true and real as fact. But it is what is for them ordinary life in an ordinary world. Most of the time, the hero is someone who is at least initially not of particular consequence as the story begins, although many times, especially in mythology, there was something strange or special about the hero's birth. Okay, they may be part god, that's very common. I tend to refer to that as a demigod, or blessed by the gods, or a hidden prince's son, or a hidden princess, or any number of other things. So, as the story begins, something occurs that invites them to leave that familiar world or life. Most of the time, the hero initially resists, or even outright refuses, and says, no, I'm going to stay here, I like this place. At this time, sometimes before the refusal of the call, sometimes after, you have a guide or mentor figure who shows up and invites the hero to leave, says, come on, I'll teach you, I will help you. Occasionally, the guide or mentor is not in favor of them leaving. The guide or mentor figure is trying to teach them and prepare them and doesn't think they should go yet, but the hero goes anyway. Generally speaking, there then is a second call. The hero unknowingly makes a bargain that forces them out, or they are otherwise tempted or drawn or forced out of their ordinary life. And then they come to that first threshold, about a quarter of the way through the first quarter of the circle. They come to and this is the first major challenge the hero encounters. It is normally some obstacle that would keep him or her from successfully starting out, leaving the ordinary world to go off on adventure. This leaving of the ordinary world to go off on adventure marks the beginning of the road of trials. Act 2 deals with facing the supreme ordeal. That's a fancy way that our diagram uses We see it there, Act 2, Supreme Ordeal at the bottom. For the quest or challenge that the hero has to conquer. Many times, as in fantasy, which is perhaps the most direct modern descendant in style and tone of ancient mythology, as it was in ancient mythology, it's a question of life or death, whether the world is saved or not, whether a country is saved or not. So Supreme Ordeal can be very appropriate. The first part of the Supreme Ordeal is the descent or the abyss. In mythology, this almost always meant literally going into some monster's lair or into a version of hell or the underworld. It happens over and over again in hero myths. But the Road of Trials is a series of trials and challenges of increasing difficulty and danger as the hero faces the moment their personal role as a hero is most challenged. Okay? Often, when they reach that final moment, and it's, can I do this? Can I be a hero? Can I overcome this obstacle? Can I do what is necessary? Some victory is achieved. And in mythology, this is most often symbolized by the granting, obtaining, or theft of some great prize. Now, that great prize might be a physical object. It might be a position of authority in society. It might be power of some kind, supernatural or physical. There are lots of things it can be. Generally, there is some kind of encounter with a greater supernatural figure, often a mother or father figure. In mythology, where demigods are rife, this is often a meeting with the god or goddess that is the non-human parent. The descent ends with the hero hitting bottom in apparent defeat or death. So there will be some great personal challenge where the hero has to decide whether or not they are really a hero. Can they do it? And often there is a moment of defeat where it looks like everything's going to go wrong, a symbolic death, sometimes a literal death that they have to return from. In part 2, we see the hero survive. They come through this moment of almost defeat. They confirm that they really are a hero. They haven't won and completed the quest yet, but they've met their personal greatest challenge to whether or not they can be a hero, and they're going forward. Normally, some great gift that we mentioned earlier that comes with that victory is received either just before or just after the nadir, the low point, the apparent defeat or death. If it's received before, then it will be the key to winning that battle. If it's received afterward, then the hero proves themselves worthy by facing that great challenge and choosing to be a hero anyway. They haven't solved the problem, though, yet. What they've done is achieved what is needed to solve the problem. Their personal journey is a success. At this point, we wait to see whether or not they can save the world or save their community. The hero then faces a second set of obstacles that are designed to challenge his or her ability to bring about that victory for the world. Sometimes they are rescued from outside. Some force or person comes and brings them back to the normal world to face that evil that is invading there. Sometimes they go themselves. Sometimes they don't want to go and they have to be convinced to return. Often in this process, there's another low point where they either almost turn their back on the journey or they despair of being able to return. They're not going to get there in time, that kind of thing. At this point, the hero reaches the third threshold, and they cross back into the world, the ordinary world they left as an ordinary person, but now they are extraordinary. They are a hero, and they have brought the means to save this community. In Act 3, we have a showdown, the final conflict, the climax. The hero faces their enemy or enemies with the gift they've achieved, and knowing what they can do, Their greatest personal challenge has already been overcome, remember. We already saw that. And so now we have a hero who is sure of themselves and faces this greater threat. There may or may not be some official or symbolic restoration of the common world that is resurrection-like. Sometimes they just slide right back in and they come into battle on the side of good and win. Other times it's this monumental return where everybody thought they were dead, or they've proven themselves worthy and they receive some position in the old world that they didn't have. Okay. If the hero is to remain permanently or indefinitely in the regular world they left at the beginning, they do so as a person apart, a master of two worlds. Someone who knows both the ordinary world and has also mastered the extraordinary. Occasionally, they stay as the incorporation, a prophet, or the embodiment of some divine or supernatural force. The cycle then completes for this story with the hero able to live freely as they choose, and they have the benefits of both worlds, often going back and forth between them.